Okay, so think about this for a sec. How often do you really wake up and you feel like completely rested? Like you could just get up and go without even needing that first cup of coffee?
I think that's a great question. Most people
Yeah,
um, don't really give a whole lot of thought to sleep. And the reason is because it just seems so natural.
it does.
It's
Yeah.
not like breathing or,
Yeah.
eating. We just,
Yeah.
we just do it. We just go to sleep every night. And most people don't really understand the profound impact that it has.
Yeah, and it turns out you're not alone if you're not feeling rested because like two-thirds of adults in developed nations are not getting the recommended 8 hours a night.
It's an epidemic, really. And the implications are really serious. It's not just about feeling a bit tired or sluggish. It has ramifications for every aspect of our health, our mental well-being, and even our longevity.
Right, and that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today, the fascinating world of sleep as explored in Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep.
It's a really groundbreaking work and really pulls together a lot of the latest research on sleep and its impact on us.
Yeah. So today we're going to be focusing on extracting the most crucial insights from the book, giving you, the listener, a concise yet thorough understanding of why sleep really is vital. So get ready for those aha moments that might just change the way you think about your nightly routine.
And there are plenty of those in the book. It's really quite eye-opening. The consequences of chronic sleep loss are laid bare. We're talking about a severely weakened immune system, doubling the risk of cancer, and a strong link to Alzheimer's disease later in life.
And for me, I didn't realize like how intertwined all this stuff is. So it was really eye-opening for me too.
It's not intuitive, is it?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily think, oh, if I don't get enough sleep, I'm going to increase my risk for cancer.
Right.
But the research is very clear on that.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it also puts like a huge strain on your heart, increases your risk of heart attacks and strokes. It can really mess with your blood sugar levels, pushing you towards a pre-diabetic state. It even negatively affects your mental health, contributing to depression, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts.
The impact on our emotional regulation is profound. And the thing is, we often don't even realize how deeply sleep deprivation is affecting us.
Right. It's almost like we're operating with like a handicap, but don't realize it.
Precisely. And the cost of this sleep deprivation is not just individual, it's a societal issue too.
Yeah. The World Health Organization has actually declared a sleep loss epidemic in industrialized nations.
It's a serious public health concern.
Yeah, and one of the scariest things is drowsy driving, which actually causes a lot of accidents, a crazy amount of accidents. I think it was like one fatality every hour in the US.
That's right, and that statistic really underscores the danger. Drowsy driving is actually more dangerous than drunk driving, which a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, that was actually crazy to me. I was like, wow, this is,
It's a sobering thought.
yeah, it is. So, and for the longest time, science couldn't fully explain why we sleep. Like, we know why we eat and drink to survive, right?
Yeah.
But this essential behavior, it was this big mystery.
Yes. Unlike those other basic drives like eating, drinking, and reproducing, the purpose of sleep remained elusive for a very long time. And it is paradoxical from an evolutionary perspective.
Like, it almost seems disadvantageous, right?
Yeah.
To sleep.
Yes.
Yes.
To spend a third of our lives essentially unconscious and vulnerable, it seems counterintuitive.
Right.
However, the fact that it's so ubiquitous across the animal kingdom really speaks to its fundamental importance.
So what are some of the things Matthew Walker has found through his research?
Well, Matthew Walker is a professor of neuroscience and psychology at UC Berkeley, and he's been studying sleep for over 2 decades.
Oh, wow.
Um, and his book really explores the science of sleep from multiple angles, looking at its impact on our brains, our bodies, our emotions, our creativity, and even our lifespan.
Okay. So for this deep dive, we want to extract those core insights, the key takeaways that'll give you a better understanding of just how essential sleep is.
Absolutely. We want to equip you with the knowledge to make informed choices about your sleep habits.
Okay, so let's start with like just understanding the basics. What exactly is going on when we sleep?
Well, there are 2 main forces that govern our sleep-wake cycle.
Okay.
The first is what's called the circadian rhythm,
Okay.
and the second is what's called the homeostatic sleep drive or sleep pressure.
Okay, so the circadian rhythm.
Yes, the circadian rhythm is essentially our internal 24-hour clock.
Okay.
It regulates a wide range of biological processes, including our sleep-wake cycles, hormone release, body temperature, even our mood and alertness levels fluctuate throughout the day and night, according to this circadian rhythm.
Okay, and the sleep pressure.
So, as we go about our day awake, a neurochemical called adenosine gradually accumulates in our brain. This buildup of adenosine essentially signals to the brain that we need rest, and it increases our drive to sleep.
Okay, so it's kind of like as the day goes on,
Yeah.
we get more and more adenosine, and we're like, ugh, I'm getting tired.
Precisely.
It's time for bed.
The longer we're awake, the stronger that sleep pressure becomes.
Okay, so the circadian rhythm and the sleep pressure.
They work together to regulate our sleep-wake cycle.
Okay.
So in the morning, our circadian rhythm is promoting wakefulness, helping us to overcome that sleep inertia from the night before.
Oh, okay.
But as the day progresses, adenosine builds up, increasing our sleep pressure, and our circadian rhythm naturally starts to wind down in the evening, reinforcing that desire for rest.
Okay, so it's almost like these two are fighting all day, and then
In a sense, yes.
Yeah.
They're constantly interacting and modulating our levels of alertness and sleepiness.
Okay, and I know like some people are just naturally morning people, and then there are those who are like night owls.
Yes, this is where chronotypes come into play.
Yeah.
We have morning larks, who naturally wake up early feeling refreshed and alert, and night owls who thrive in the evening and prefer later bedtimes.
And I've heard that this is actually genetic.
There's a strong genetic component to chronotypes,
Okay.
but unfortunately our society is often structured in a way that favors morning larks.
Right, like early work and school schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So night owls often find themselves constantly battling their natural sleep-wake cycle.
Yeah. And this can lead to chronic sleep deprivation, which is linked to a whole host of health problems, as we mentioned earlier.
It's a real issue for many people and something that we need to be more aware of as a society.
Totally. And what about jet lag? What's going on there?
Well, jet lag occurs when we travel across multiple time zones and our internal circadian rhythm is out of sync with the external environment.
Okay.
Our body is still operating on the time zone of our origin, so we feel tired during the day when we should be awake, and then we're wide awake at night when we should be sleeping.
Right, like you're on a completely different schedule.
It's like our internal clock is still stuck on the old time zone,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes a while to adjust to the new one.
Yeah, and sometimes that can take a while.
It can.
Yeah.
And interestingly, eastward travel is typically harder on our bodies than westward travel.
Why is that?
Well, our natural circadian rhythm is actually slightly longer than 24 hours. So when we travel east, we're essentially trying to shorten our day, which goes against our natural tendency. Whereas traveling west lengthens our day, which is more in sync with our internal clock.
Oh, that makes sense. And so many people, including myself, rely on caffeine to get through the day. How does that even work? And what about melatonin? Does that help with sleep?
So caffeine is a stimulant that works by blocking the effects of adenosine, that neurochemical that builds up in our brain and makes us sleepy.
Oh, okay.
So when we consume caffeine, it essentially tricks the brain into thinking we're not tired. But it's a temporary fix.
Mhm.
Once the caffeine wears off, that pent-up adenosine floods back in, and we often experience that familiar caffeine crash.
Ugh, the crash is the worst.
It can be quite unpleasant.
Mm.
And as we get older, it takes longer for our bodies to metabolize caffeine.
Mm.
So that afternoon coffee might keep an older person awake much longer than someone younger.
Yeah, okay. And what about melatonin? Does that actually help with sleep?
Melatonin is a hormone that's naturally produced by our brain in response to darkness. It helps to regulate our sleep-wake cycle. So when it gets dark, our brain starts producing melatonin, which signals to our body that it's time to sleep.
Okay.
However, exposure to light, especially blue light from electronic devices, can suppress melatonin production. This is why it's so important to avoid screen time in the hour or two before bed.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always have to be mindful of.
It makes a big difference.
It does. Now, this might seem like a silly question, but how do scientists actually define sleep?
It's a good question because we all intuitively know what sleep is.
Yeah.
But defining it scientifically involves looking for certain observable characteristics.
Mhm.
So these include reduced muscle tone, a stereotypical posture, usually lying down, decreased responsiveness to external stimuli, and importantly, reversibility. So a sleeping person can be awakened, unlike someone who's in a coma, for example. And finally, sleep occurs in a timed pattern throughout the 24-hour cycle, guided by our circadian rhythm.
Okay, and what's happening in our brains when we're asleep? We've heard about brain waves and different stages of sleep.
So as we transition from wakefulness to sleep, our brainwave activity slows down. The rapid, irregular patterns of wakefulness are replaced by slower, more synchronized patterns.
Okay.
We first enter the lighter stages of sleep called NREM sleep, stages 1 and 2. Then we progress into the deeper stages, 3 and 4. This deep sleep is characterized by very slow, high-amplitude brainwaves. And you might have heard about sleep spindles. These are brief bursts of rapid brainwave activity that occur during NREM sleep.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
And it's thought that they play a role in memory consolidation. And they also help to protect sleep by blocking out external stimuli.
Wow. So even during sleep, our brain is still, like, working.
Absolutely. And during this deep sleep, the thalamus, which is the brain sensory relay center, actively blocks the transmission of sensory information to the cortex.
Okay.
So essentially, it's like the brain is saying, okay, we need to rest and recuperate. We're going to shut down all the external input.
I see
And
that.
this allows the cortex to engage in these slow, rhythmic patterns of activity, which are essential for memory consolidation and a whole range of other restorative processes.
Okay. And then there's REM sleep.
Yes, REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement sleep, and it's the stage of sleep most closely associated with vivid dreaming. In contrast to the slow-wave activity of deep sleep, brainwave patterns during REM sleep actually look quite similar to wakefulness.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like we're awake.
In a sense, yes. The brain is highly active during REM sleep. In fact, some areas are even more active than they are during wakefulness.
Oh, wow. And it's not just us humans that sleep, right?
Sleep is a universal phenomenon in the animal kingdom. Every animal that's been studied, from simple insects to complex mammals, exhibits some form of sleep. It's a fundamental biological requirement, and in some ways you could even argue that sleep is the original state of being.
Oh, really?
Well, if you think about it, being awake exposes us to danger and requires a lot of energy.
Right.
So it's possible that a state of quiescence, a sleep-like state, might have been the default mode for early life forms.
Okay. That's fascinating.
And wakefulness then evolved as a way to engage in necessary activities like foraging for food and reproduction.
Okay. So do all creatures sleep the same way that we do?
Not exactly. While NREM sleep is observed across the animal kingdom,
Okay.
clear physiological signs of REM sleep are primarily found in birds and mammals.
Okay.
This suggests that REM sleep is a more specialized and perhaps more recently evolved phenomenon.
I see. So it sounds like sleep is pretty non-negotiable, but I know in extreme circumstances like starvation, it can be overridden.
Yes, that's right. When faced with a severe threat to survival like starvation, the biological drive to stay alive can temporarily suppress the need for sleep. But this is not sustainable in the long term.
Okay. So now I kind of want to get into how we sleep today compared to how humans historically slept.
Well, in modern society, most of us are accustomed to a monophasic sleep pattern, meaning we get one long block of sleep at night.
Right.
However, in cultures without widespread electricity and in hunter-gatherer societies, a biphasic sleep pattern is more common.
Oh, okay.
This involves a longer period of sleep at night, typically 7 to 8 hours, followed by a shorter nap in the afternoon.
So that afternoon slump is maybe like a natural dip in alertness.
It could very well be.
Yeah, and you mentioned something about terrestrial versus arboreal sleep. What's that all about?
Well, humans are terrestrial sleepers, meaning we sleep on the ground.
Right.
But many other primates, our evolutionary cousins, sleep in trees for safety.
Okay.
And this arboreal sleeping has actually posed an evolutionary constraint, particularly on REM sleep.
Why is that?
During REM sleep, our muscles are essentially paralyzed.
Oh, right.
And imagine trying to maintain your grip on a tree branch in that state.
Yeah, you'd fall right out.
Exactly.
Huh?
So it's likely that our tree-dwelling ancestors experienced less deep and less frequent REM sleep than we do today.
Oh, that's interesting. And what about sleep throughout our lifespan?
No.
How does it change from infancy to old age?
Well, even before we're born, in the womb, fetuses spend a large proportion of their time in REM sleep.
Really?
And this is thought to be crucial for brain development,
Okay.
laying down the foundation for neural connections.
So they're just like dreaming away in there.
In a sense, yes. Their brains are incredibly active during this time.
Okay. And then as we transition into childhood.
During childhood and adolescence, we see a gradual shift towards more deep sleep.
Okay.
And this deep sleep is essential for synaptic pruning, which is the process of eliminating unnecessary neural connections to make the brain more efficient.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like decluttering.
Exactly. It's like refining and streamlining the brain circuitry.
Interesting.
And adolescents also experience a shift in their circadian rhythm.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that teenagers have a harder time waking up early.
That's right. Their biological clocks are naturally shifted later, so they tend to feel more alert later in the evening and prefer later bedtimes.
Okay, so it's not just them being rebellious.
Not necessarily, no. It's a biological phenomenon.
Yeah. And then what happens as we get older?
Well, as we age, our sleep unfortunately becomes less efficient.
Okay.
We see a decline in both the quantity and quality of deep sleep, and our circadian rhythm weakens.
Okay.
This often leads to earlier bedtimes and earlier wake-up times. And melatonin production also declines with age, which can further contribute to sleep difficulties.
So it's kind of like a double whammy. You need more sleep, but you're actually getting less.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about the science of sleep and how it changes throughout our lives. Now let's dive into the benefits of sleep for our brains.
This is where things get really exciting. Sleep is not just about resting our bodies. It plays a vital role in a whole range of cognitive functions.
Okay, so let's start with memory. How does sleep help us remember what we've learned?
Sleep, particularly deep sleep, is essential for memory consolidation.
Yeah.
During this phase, new information and experiences are transferred from the hippocampus, which is a temporary storage site, to the cortex for long-term storage. And those sleep spindles that we talked about earlier, they seem to play a key role in strengthening these memories.
Okay, so while we're asleep, our brain is actually like filing away information.
Exactly. It's like our brain is organizing and storing all the data from the day so we can access it later.
Wow. So if you pull an all-nighter studying for an exam.
You're actually doing yourself a disservice
Oh, wow.
because you're depriving your brain of the opportunity to consolidate those memories.
Okay. And I've heard about something called targeted memory reactivation. What is that?
So this is a fascinating area of research where scientists are exploring ways to reactivate specific memories during sleep to enhance learning.
Oh, wow.
It might involve subtly playing sounds or presenting cues associated with the material you're trying to learn.
Okay.
And the idea is that this can help to strengthen those memories while you sleep.
That's great.
It's still in its early stages, but it has a lot of potential.
So sleep helps us remember things, but it also helps us to forget. Why is that important?
You know, forgetting is often seen as a negative thing, but it's actually a crucial part of efficient memory function.
Really?
If we remembered absolutely everything, our brains would be overwhelmed with useless information.
Okay.
Forgetting helps to declutter our minds and make it easier to access the information that's truly important.
Okay. And does sleep play a role in this forgetting process?
Yes, during sleep, the brain goes through a process of synaptic pruning,
Okay.
which is the elimination of weaker or less important connections between neurons. So it's kind of like a spring cleaning for the brain,
Interesting.
getting rid of the clutter and making space for new information.
And does sleep help with learning physical skills too?
Absolutely. Sleep is crucial for consolidating motor skills.
Okay.
So if you're learning to play a musical instrument or a new sport, getting enough sleep after practice can significantly improve your performance.
That's good to know. I always tell my kids to practice before bed.
And there's good reason for that.
Wow.
During sleep, the brain replays and refines the motor sequences you've learned, making them more fluid and automatic.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, and this is a big one. Creativity. Can sleep actually make us more creative?
Yes, it can. And this is largely attributed to REM sleep and dreaming. During REM sleep, our brains are very active, forging connections between seemingly unrelated ideas and concepts. It's like our brain is brainstorming in the background.
Okay.
And this can lead to those aha moments, those sudden flashes of insight that often come to us after a good night's sleep.
Yeah, there are lots of stories of people making discoveries or having creative breakthroughs after sleeping on a problem.
Absolutely. The book mentions Dmitri Mendeleev, who reportedly saw the structure of the periodic table in a dream,
Really?
and August Kekulé, who discovered the structure of the benzene molecule after dreaming of a snake biting its own tail.
That's incredible. So it seems like sleep isn't just about resting, but it's also a time when our brains are doing some of their most important work.
Precisely. Sleep is an incredibly active and dynamic process that is absolutely essential for a whole range of cognitive functions.
Okay. So we've talked about the amazing benefits of sleep, but now let's get into what happens when we don't get enough.
So, the negative consequences of sleep loss are far-reaching. One of the immediate effects is cognitive impairment. We see a decline in attention, concentration, memory, and decision-making abilities.
Okay.
And this can be quite dangerous, especially when it comes to activities like driving.
Yeah, drowsy driving is a major problem.
Absolutely. Studies have shown that sleep-deprived drivers perform just as poorly as drunk drivers.
Wow.
They have slower reaction times, impaired judgment, and are more likely to make mistakes.
And I know a lot of people think they can just power through it.
But that's simply not true. Our brains need sleep to function properly, and we can't simply will ourselves to stay alert when we're sleep-deprived.
And I imagine there are long-term consequences as well.
Yes. Chronic sleep loss has been linked to a whole host of health problems, as we discussed earlier, including an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, and Alzheimer's disease.
And on top of that, it also takes a toll on our mental and emotional well-being.
Yes, sleep deprivation can lead to increased stress, anxiety, irritability, and even depression.
And I've heard that it can also mess with your hormones.
It does. Sleep loss disrupts the balance of hormones that regulate our appetite, our stress response, and even our immune function.
So it's like a cascading effect.
Exactly. Sleep deprivation sets off a chain reaction that negatively impacts almost every system in our body.
Okay. So it's clear that sleep is crucial, but what happens when we dream?
Well, dreaming is still largely a mystery, but we do know that most vivid dreaming occurs during REM sleep.
Okay.
And during this stage, many areas of the brain are highly active, even more so than during wakefulness.
Oh, wow. And why is that?
Well, it's not entirely clear, but it's thought that REM sleep plays a role in memory consolidation, emotional processing, and even creativity.
Okay. So what do we know about the content of our dreams? Do they have any meaning?
Well, Freud famously believed that dreams were a window into our unconscious desires.
Right.
But modern neuroscience takes a slightly different view. The current thinking is that dreams are more likely to reflect our recent experiences, concerns, and emotions.
Okay.
It's like our brain is processing and making sense of the day's events while we sleep.
That makes sense.
And some researchers believe that dreams may even serve as a form of overnight therapy.
Oh, how so?
By allowing us to re-experience emotionally charged events in a safe, offline environment, dreams might help us to detach from the raw intensity of those emotions and process them in a more constructive way.
Interesting. So it's almost like a way to work through things without the stress of being awake?
Exactly. And there's even some evidence to suggest that REM sleep can enhance our social intelligence.
Oh, really?
Studies have shown that people who get enough REM sleep are better at reading facial expressions and understanding social cues.
So it's like sleep helps us to be more empathetic.
In a sense, yes. It seems to fine-tune our ability to navigate the complexities of social interactions.
Okay. So dreaming is clearly a fascinating and important part of sleep. But I know a lot of people struggle with sleep problems.
Sleep disorders are incredibly common and
Right.
can have a significant impact on our quality of life.
Yeah. What are some of the most common sleep disorders?
Well, insomnia is probably the most well-known,
Okay.
and it's characterized by difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or both.
Right.
And it can be caused by a variety of factors, including stress, anxiety, depression, and even certain medical conditions.
Okay. And what about sleepwalking? Is that considered a sleep disorder?
Yes, sleepwalking, also known as somnambulism, is a sleep disorder that occurs during deep sleep.
Okay.
And it's characterized by getting out of bed and walking around while still asleep.
And do people remember sleepwalking?
Typically, no. Sleepwalkers usually have no memory of their actions.
Okay. And is there anything we can do to improve our sleep?
Absolutely. There are many things we can do to promote healthy sleep habits. One of the most important is maintaining a regular sleep schedule,
Okay.
going to bed and waking up at around the same time every day, even on weekends.
Yeah, that's one that I always struggle with on the weekends.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But consistency is key when it comes to regulating our circadian rhythm.
Okay. What else?
Creating a relaxing bedtime routine can also be helpful. So taking a warm bath, reading a book, listening to calming music, anything that helps you to wind down.
Okay. And what about the environment?
The sleep environment is also important. Make sure your bedroom is dark, quiet, and cool. And invest in a comfortable bed and pillows.
Right. And I know caffeine and alcohol before bed are a no-no.
Yes, those are both sleep disruptors. Caffeine can stay in your system for several hours, making it difficult to fall asleep. And while alcohol might initially make you feel drowsy, it actually interferes with deeper stages of sleep.
Okay. And what about those over-the-counter sleep aids?
It's best to avoid relying on those long-term.
Okay.
They can be habit-forming, and they don't address the underlying causes of sleep problems.
Okay. So is there anything else we can do?
Well, regular exercise can be very beneficial for sleep, but it's best to avoid exercising too close to bedtime.
Right.
And exposure to natural light during the day can help to regulate our circadian rhythm. So get outside for a walk or just sit by a window for a while each day.
That's good advice. Now, I know Matthew Walker talks about a new vision for sleep in the 21st century. What does he mean by that?
Well, he argues that we need a societal shift in how we view and prioritize sleep. We need to start recognizing sleep as a fundamental human need, not a luxury to be sacrificed.
Okay.
He advocates for later school start times, for teenagers to align with their natural sleep patterns,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and for optimizing hospital environments to promote restorative sleep for patients.
Right.
And within businesses, recognizing the value of well-rested employees.
I think a lot of people are still operating under the mindset that sleep is for the weak.
Unfortunately, yes. There's still a stigma attached to prioritizing sleep.
Right.
But the science is clear. Sleep is essential for our health, our well-being, our productivity, our creativity, and our longevity.
It sounds like sleep is kind of a superpower.
In a way, it is. It's one of the most powerful tools we have for optimizing our physical and mental performance.
So, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember from this deep dive?
That sleep is not optional. It's as essential as food, water, and air. We simply cannot thrive without it.
And what's one particularly surprising or interesting fact that you learned from the book?
For me, it was the discovery that even a single night of sleep deprivation can have a significant impact on our cognitive function and our physical health.
Yeah, it's amazing how sensitive our bodies are to sleep loss.
It really is.
Okay, and finally, what's one thought-provoking question or idea you want to leave our listeners with?
I would encourage everyone to think about their own sleep habits. Are you getting enough sleep? What small changes can you make to prioritize sleep in your life? It might be the single most important investment you can make in your health and happiness.
So if you want to learn more about the fascinating world of sleep and discover the incredible power of a good night's rest, we highly recommend checking out Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. It's a real eye-opener and just might change the way you think about sleep forever.
It's a must-read for anyone who wants to live a healthier, happier, and more fulfilling life.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into sleep. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Sweet dreams.